Today, Ontario's Government for the People implemented the latest phase of its planned response to the federal government's legalization of cannabis by passing strict new regulations to protect children and youth, keeping communities and roads safe, and combating the illegal market. The result of widespread consultations with the people of Ontario, these regulations provide clarity for a private recreational cannabis store system that will begin April 1st, 2019, under the close oversight of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. The regulations establish a minimum distance of 150 meters between cannabis retail stores and schools, including private and federally funded First Nations schools off reserve. Other regulations include retailers will not be permitted to allow anyone under the age of 19 to enter their stores. Illegal cannabis retailers who were operating after October 17, 2018 are not eligible for Ontario cannabis sales licenses. A prohibition on the issuance of a license to any individual or organization who has an association with organized crime. Requirement that individuals or entities applying for an operator license demonstrate their tax compliance status to show that they're in good standing with the government, and a requirement for all private recreational cannabis retail storefronts to be standalone stores only. A strike has been averted at the Globe and Mail just hours before the deadline. Unifor, which represents 320 reporters, editors, and other staff at the national newspaper, says the two sides have reached a tentative agreement. The union says details of the deal won't be released until the agreement is presented to members for ratification. Unifor had said it was seeking pension protection and an end to what it says is a pay gap between the Globe's male and female employees. The two sides had been negotiating for 6 months, but Unifor said talks had not moved forward for the past 2. Members had given their bargaining committee a 94% strike mandate 2 weeks ago. The Canadian press has learned that Ontario workers earning less than $30,000 will no longer have to pay provincial income tax starting next year, and those earning up to $38,000 will pay less tax. Government sources say the plan will be laid out in the province's fall economic statement, slated to be tabled in the legislature this afternoon. The sources also say the tax changes will apply to 1.1 million Ontario workers making minimum wage or slightly above it, noting some other low-income workers who currently use a combination of rebates and other measures are already spared provincial income tax. They say those who will be newly exempt are expected to save roughly $850 a year or $1,250 per year for households with 2 exempt workers. The sources say the plan will cost the province about $120 million between January 1st and the end of the fiscal year. Premier Doug Ford had promised to eliminate provincial income tax for low-income workers in exchange for scrapping a minimum wage hike planned by the previous Liberal government that was set to take effect next year. His proposal was criticized by opposition parties, and an independent economic analysis conducted at the time showed low-income workers would benefit more from a higher minimum wage than lower taxes because the wage hike would bring more money than a tax cut would save them. Ontario's minimum wage rose from $11.60 to $14 an hour on January 1st and was scheduled to increase to $15 next year, but the Progressive Conservative government has since introduced legislation that would cap the minimum wage at $14 until October 2020. Any future increases would be linked to the rate of inflation. The government announced earlier this week that the fall economic statement would also raise the number of seats in the legislature required to achieve official party status, but has otherwise given few details on the fiscal